The Christian Bible is the best-selling book of all time and forms the basis for Western law and the morality of almost a third of the world's population. So even if you're a believer of a different religion or reject religion altogether, it is probably helpful to understand at least a little bit about it. The Bible, although distributed as a single volume, is actually a compilation of texts written over thousands of years. Each of these texts is referred to as a book. Each of these books is divided into chapters, and each of these chapters is divided into verses. When referring to a specific passage in the Bible, you would say the name of the book, followed by the chapter, followed by the verse. For example, you would say 2 Corinthians 3:17. You would not say
2 Corinthians 3:17. That's the whole ballgame.
From individual books, we now look at groupings of books. All of the books of the Bible are divided into one of two segments. The Old Testament, which includes all of the gore, drama, and smiting, and the New Testament, which includes all of the love thy neighbor Jesus stuff, except for the very end, which starts to sound a lot like the Old Testament again. The books in each testament are also classified into several categories. Old Testament books are divided into 4 or 5 groups. The Pentateuch, also known as the 5 books of Moses, insert 10 commandments here. The Histories, the Wisdoms, which is where you find stories like David and Goliath, and the Prophets, sometimes divided into major and minor prophets. The New Testament books are divided into the Gospels, which tell the life of Jesus, the Apostolic History, which only consists of the book of Acts, the Epistles, which are written by a specific author to a living audience, often divided into those written by the Apostle Paul, and the rest which are written by the author for whom it is named, and the Apocalypse, which only contains the book of Revelations. These are the general divisions of the Bible, but we're not done yet. We now have to look at different versions of the Bible. Christianity is a diverse patchwork of different sects, each having their own interpretation of the Bible, and in many cases their own version of it. The Bible used by Protestants usually has 66 books, 39 in the Old Testament and 27 in the New. This is the version of the Bible that most people in English-speaking countries are familiar with. The Catholic Bible has 73 books, with 46 in the Old Testament and 27 in the New. The Orthodox Bible is a bit more complicated. The Catholic Church has a global institution that all Catholics recognize as being the legitimate authority on what books are to be used. And Protestants have more or less agreed to use the books determined by Martin Luther to be legitimate. The highest authority in the Orthodox Church are the ecumenical councils, which are tasked to determine important questions of the Church, including what books to include in the Bible. The Orthodox Church does not have a universally recognized canon because there has not been a decisive council to determine this, so there are multiple versions. Most Orthodox churches accept the same 73 books that the Catholic Church does, but there are versions that contain up to 5 additional books, mostly in the Old Testament. So why are there different versions of the Bible? This has largely to do with what sources you are using. There's a tendency to think of the Bible in the form it is usually presented to us, which is in a single volume and translated to whatever our first language is. But just like other ancient books such as the Iliad or the works of Herodotus, it is based on a collection of ancient manuscripts. And so different versions of the Bible come from different collections of manuscripts. The Protestant Bible generally uses the Masoretic texts. These are ancient manuscripts written in Hebrew and Aramaic. Protestants also tend to consult other ancient manuscripts in the creation of their Bible, such as the Samaritan Torah and the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Catholic and Orthodox churches generally use the Septuagint, which is a Greek translation of the Hebrew texts. This translation was commissioned by Ptolemy II of Egypt, who wanted a Greek language version of the Torah for the Library of Alexandria. The Septuagint includes all of the books contained in the Masoretic texts, plus additional texts. These additional texts were far newer than most of the others. Rabbis rejected these newer texts and continued to use the Masoretic texts. The books that were rejected by the rabbis are referred to by Christians as the deuterocanonical texts, sometimes called the Second Canon. Protestants wanted a more authentic Christianity that had more connection with the time of Jesus. They also wanted to reject certain books that supported theological ideas that reformers such as Martin Luther believed were corrupting the church. So getting rid of the deuterocanonical text was like killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Protestants would end up lumping these books in with the Apocrypha, which we'll get into a little later. So why are there versions of the Orthodox Bible that include additional books that the Catholic Bible doesn't? Orthodox churches take from the entirety of the Septuagint, while the Catholic Church only takes a portion of it. They used to take all of it, but in the 5th century, St. Jerome was tasked to create a new Latin translation of the Bible. During this process, he came to believe that the newer Hebrew translations of the Old Testament were better than those used in the creation of the Septuagint.
New is always better.
So he decided to exclude certain texts from the Septuagint that did not meet his new standards for translation. This resulted in the exclusion of 5 books of the Septuagint from being added to the Catholic Bible. The Latin translations of these books became known as the Vulgate, and are the basis for translations of the Catholic Bible today. On top of these, there are many other Eastern churches that include one-off books from outside either collection of texts, but there are so many of those that it is better left to its own video. Outside the regular canons of Christianity, there is the Apocrypha, which in Latin means secret or non-canon. It ultimately refers to what texts are not included in the Bible, and what's considered apocryphal differs between churches. The Protestants have the largest set, which includes the entirety of the Deuterocanon, plus everything not in the Bible. For the Catholic Church, this includes everything outside of the Latin Vulgate, and for the Orthodox Church, it includes everything outside the Septuagint and sometimes books in it. So there you have it, a collection of ancient manuscripts divided into books, split into old and new, categorized, and disputed over. If you want to keep up with my latest videos, then you should click the subscribe button right here. If you would like to financially help this channel, then you can go to Patreon, where donors get special perks, like having your name in the credits and early access to videos. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to share this video.